everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm going to be trying to do a tag video that I saw go the rounds a while ago. I thought it looked like a really fun video idea, and this is the book recommendation tag. There are about 15 questions. I will have the questions listed below along with the original booktuber because this is such a fun tag and a great idea, so thank you. But just to preface this, I may use the same book on a couple questions because obviously those are my faves and I kind of feel strongly about them, so I might have them in different spots. I might be looking down my notes below because I honestly am not going to remember all these questions off the top of my head and I don't really have my computer set up. So, sorry. So anyways, let's just go ahead and dive right in. Excited to give you some of these different book recs. The first question is a book that you tell people is your favorite. I kind of have a couple go-tos because, you know, I like a lot of dark romance, and so you're not going to always give that to people as like your favorite because they're not going to get that same genre as you. I like a lot of dark mafia, dark romance, taboo romance. So I may not give those heavy ones right away to people. So honestly, like there's two books that like are my go-to for people, and it's going to be no shock to you if you've watched my channel before that Heartless is a go-to for me. This was my favorite book of 2022. I've gushed about this book in multiple videos. Has my top book boyfriend Cade in here. It's such a sweet small town, you know, single dad, grumpy sunshine. It's got all the amazing things to make a great book. This is a 6-star book for me. So I'm going to recommend this as like a favorite of mine because I feel like it's an easier romance to get into besides like my dark stuff that I read. That somebody that doesn't read a lot of romance, maybe they'll enjoy it, or just somebody kind of not fully into that. So Heartless is like my go-to that I tell everybody to read. And it's just Elsie Silver has become one of my favorite authors. I really want to dive into her backlist. So this is like a must that I will definitely rec and tell people is my favorite. And I'm not going to go too deep into the whole plot and everything like that because, again, like you've heard me talk about that book multiple times. The other one that I would recommend is A Birthday Girl. Heartless is my favorite. Birthday Girl is what got me into romance again a little bit more. And it was my first exploration of boyfriend's dad and age gap. So Birthday Girl will always hold a special place in my heart. I love it. I love Penelope Douglas. Pike is like dream man. And it's just such a fun, amazing age gap, sexy romance. So those are like my two kind of go-to. If I had to narrow it down, I'd probably say Heartless because it's just so special to me and I love it so much. So question number 2 is a book that is your guilty pleasure. Honestly, I'm not guilty or feel shame at all about the smut or the romance or the dark romance that I read. I'm pretty okay with all of it. I love the stuff that I read. I'm not ashamed to say it. But if I had a guilty pleasure, I would probably have to say that it is After. The only reason I say guilty pleasure on this is people kind of view this a certain way. They kind of look down on it a little bit now, like it was from like Wattpad, and it's a very toxic, over the top, angsty kind of a mess, but I freaking loved it. I read After, a few, like kind of when COVID was hitting, or a little bit before that. And I ended up buying the whole series and I couldn't put it down. Like I read them back to back and I was obsessed. It was so toxic. It was so angsty. It was so all over the place and I loved it. And it honestly got me back into romance because I was reading a lot of like, you know, Game of Thrones or fantasy or thriller type of things. So I wasn't really only reading romance at that point, and After really got me into that. So honestly, I don't know if it'll still hold up. I only read it the one time. I haven't reread it, and I'd be interested to reread this series to see if it holds up to what I felt when I first read it. But it is kind of like one of my guilty pleasures. The other one that I have is Ice Planet of the Barbarians. I'm not really guilty about it, but I think it's like this fun, guilty little pleasure, I guess you would say, going to these blue aliens with their magic dicks and just reading this series is so fun. I try and spread it out because I haven't finished it yet. I'll read it as kind of like a palate cleanser in between books because it's just kind of like a fun, feel good kind of book for me. So I definitely love these books. Okay, the third question is a book everyone loved, but you didn't. So I have a few of these. And people are probably going to hate me in the comments or say something, but Haunting Adeline, I DNF'd that book. It was so hyped. It's hyped all over BookTube, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. It's so hyped. And I love dark romance, so it seemed like the perfect book for me. But for some reason, I don't know if it was the wrong time. Maybe just I read at the wrong time. But I freaking thought it was ridiculous. I thought the guy was so over the top stalker crazy, but then trying to be like a good guy fighting against, you know, like sex trafficking or something. Yet he's like killing people that look at this girl and stalking this girl. And it just didn't sit right with me. It just kind of felt stupid. So I did decide, because talking with Bestie Book Reviews and Bookmark by Jen, they like both love this book. So I said, I will give it another chance. I'm thinking I'm going to do a vlog maybe next month or something of trying to read that book again and see if it was just the wrong time or just I hate it. So I'm sorry if you love that book. It just didn't work for me at the time. Also didn't really like Twisted Hate. Like it was blown up everywhere. Everybody loved Twisted Hate by Anna Wong, and I didn't really think it was that great. I didn't think their reason for hating each other was that great. You know, I thought the third act breakup was stupid. I didn't really enjoy it. It's like probably my least favorite in the Twisted series by Anna Wong, but I'm definitely in the minority on that one. Okay, so question number 4 is a book that you've read the fastest. And honestly, this is kind of hard for me with work. Obviously, I'm not going to read something on like one sitting, but sometimes I'll start a book and I will not be able to go to bed. I'll be reading all freaking night. And that's what happened. At least hopefully it was on a weekend day, so I have to go to bed by a certain time. But that's what happened with this book. It's one of my favorite books. I recommend it all the time. But I usually only recommend it to dark romance readers because it is dark and it's crazy. And that is Untouchable. This is one of my favorite dark romances. Sam Mariano's like my dark romance queen. I love her books. I love this one the most. I love Carter Mahoney, even though he's a psycho. And the shit he does in this book is bonkers. You have to get past the first 3 chapters because there is sexual assault in the beginning of our heroine by our hero. So if you can get past that, it's fascinating. It goes into like the mind of a psychopath and like the psychopath tendencies, and our heroine's trying to figure out how his mind works and how to try and control or put his behavior onto her instead of putting it out into like other innocent people. So it's a fascinating psychological kind of thing too. And that's what makes it so fantastic. And so I couldn't put this down. I was obsessed. I read it overnight and I still love it. I actually really want to reread it now talking about it. But that's definitely one that I read the fastest. Okay, a book that deserves more hype. I've seen one booktuber, Jen from the Book Refuge, hype this up, and that's the reason I read it. But I don't see a lot of other people talking about it, and that is the Spider-Mate series. So this is like Ensnared, Enthralled, and Bound. This is the bound up of all 3. But this deserves so much more hype. I get it. It's a spider and it's weird, but I'm going to try and hype it up in multiple videos because honestly, this is one of the best series I've ever read. The best world building. Catan is on my book boyfriends list. If you haven't seen that, my book boyfriends list, I just did a video. I will link that down below. But he is on it and he's a freaking spider. The Ricks are so amazing. I've never read an alien romance that had such great world building in it, and they're the devotion and buildup of their romance. Catan is just so amazing. So I just think this deserves so much more hype because I know it's different, but it's just one of my favorites. Another one that I could give on that is also Dark Notes. I just read this. I think Sea of Ruin is really hyped up more than Dark Notes. I haven't read Sea of Ruin yet. I'm going to read that this month. But Dark Notes made me cry. It was beautiful. It was a teacher-student BDSM, but BDSM to help her through trauma. And it's like giving this poor girl that's had a horrible abuse and home life, just giving her voice, and it's just so beautiful. She's a pianist and he's her piano teacher, and just, I don't know, it just hit me a lot harder, and it does have a lot of dark subject matter. So I get, not everybody's gonna hype a book that's like dark romance, but I just think this deserves more hype because it does pack an emotional punch to it, and I think it's really beautiful. Okay, so the next question is a book that is becoming a series or movie. Honestly, I just read this, like, I think a few weeks ago, that Sarah Kate's Praise, which was one of my favorite books last year. It's going to be, I think, a movie. And so I'm super excited for that because that series, the Salacious Players Club series, is so amazing. Praise was my favorite. Praise made me acknowledge that I'm into praise big time. Like, I love praise in my books, and it kind of was just always in the background in my head, I guess, but this brought it forward to like, no, I love praise kink. Like, I love it. Like, if a book has like the degradation kink, I'm instantly kind of turned off to it because the praise kink is just, oh, I love it. Tell me I'm a good girl. I love praise. So I'm so excited to see if this movie is going to hold up to the book. The next question is the book that you've reread the most. And honestly, this has to do with a book that like I read at a pretty young age, which is shocking because this is a lot of dark stuff in it. So maybe this is where my dark romance love comes in. And I just get really nostalgic, and it's a comfort read for me, even though it's dark and crazy. But that is The Wolf and the Dove by Kathleen E. Woodiwiz. This is dark. It's got sexual assault like on the page, stuff that happens when they are taken over by Normandy. I think he's in Night. I can't remember. But he's like basically this conqueror. He comes, takes over. Before he gets there, she kind of gets sexually assaulted and attacked by another one of his like men. And that guy wants to keep her as his own, but the wolf basically comes in and claims her. And so it's kind of like a captive kind of thing. She's, you know, being conquered, and she hates him. It's a hate to love. But like she slowly falls for him, and it's just so, I love this romance so much. I can't believe I really read this when I was younger, so it's kind of shocking, but I've reread this so many times. I don't even remember how many times I read it. I've had multiple copies. I need a newer copy. This is super old. But The Wolf and the Dove just really holds a special place in my heart, and it really brought me to romance and historical romance as a younger reader. So maybe don't let your like young, like 12-year-old read this book. I don't know. Okay, so the next question is a book from a genre you don't usually read. There's one that I don't read a lot of thrillers anymore, so this is kind of hard. I'll probably bring up one of those. The Stand by Stephen King, I think, is one of the best books ever written. Like, that's a thriller, kind of scary, spooky, weird, end of times, a post-apocalyptic kind of thing, and I was just so into it. It's a hefty book though, so it's pretty long. Another one that, like, I don't read this now, but this was my genre before, just focusing on romance, and that is Game of Thrones. If you get me talking about Game of Thrones, I will rant and rave. I'm diehard Game of Thrones fan, except for the last season of that freaking show. Don't even get me started. I have a lot of anger, but the Game of Thrones books, these are pretty worn because I've read them a lot of times too. But Game of Thrones, just, it's so, some of the best books that I've ever read. The world building, the world that George R. Martin has created, it's so fantastic. I love this series. I love the characters. I'm a Jon Snow ride or die. And I love Drogon. Like, oh, he's my favorite dragon. But anyways, this is one that like will always hold a special place for me. Okay, the next question is a book that deserves the hype. And again, I'm going to go back to my favorite book from last year, and it deserves the hype, and that's Heartless. I will ride or die this freaking bitch, but it deserves the hype. I was scared to read it because it was so hyped. And I'm usually like, it ruins a book for me, but this book was so perfect and I couldn't believe it. It definitely was worth the hype, and it's one of my favorite books. I don't really need to go into more detail because I've already talked about this book too much. Another one that I have that's worth the hype is The Right Move. I just read this. It was one of my 6-star reads. Ryan Shea is top book boyfriend. He's on that book boyfriend list. And it's just such a beautiful romance. It's a fake dating, opposites kind of attract. It's just swoon worthy, pro basketball player. I'm sure you've heard about this. I won't go into too many details, but basically it's an amazing, amazing hero. And it's a really sweet sports romance. So I really love this. So I think it is definitely worth the hype. And then another one too that's worth the hype is Praise. Again, I just talked about it. It was very hyped, and I think it was so worth it. Emerson is one of my favorite book heroes. I love him. I love Age Gap. I love Boyfriend's Dad. I love Praise. So it was definitely hitting all the marks for me, and it was a start to such a great series. Okay, so the next question is a book you recommend when asked to give a rec. This is kind of like the first question almost to me. I think if somebody at my work or just a friend that's not really into romance asked for a rec, I'd probably give the easier ones to get into. So I would probably do those same recs, which is Heartless or Birthday Girl. Honestly, I think Birthday Girl is an amazing one to go to. It's a good start. It's light, like with the darkness. It's sweet. And it'll be a good toe in to see if you like Age Gap. And it's just such a great romance. So I think this one is a really good one just to give a recommendation for somebody who doesn't usually read this type. And then obviously I would always pick Heartless because it's one of my favorite books of all time. So again, sorry to give the same answer, but that's kind of like the main book recs I'm going to give. If I know somebody likes dark romance, I'm going to rec Untouchable every time. Like, I'm going to do it. I love Untouchable. I love San Mariano. I'm going to try and get them to freaking read a San Mariano book. Okay, so the next question is a book that has your favorite characters. I have a couple here that I want to bring up. Again, I hate to say it, I'm beating a dead horse here, but it's Heartless. The whole series, Chestnut Springs, has such an amazing characters. It's very character driven. So, I mean, you give me Cade and Willa, I'm sold. Even just seeing them in other books, I love that couple so much. I love their dad, Harvey. Like, he's such an amazing father and funny guy that says everything that he thinks. And I just love everybody in this group. I love this whole atmosphere of like being on the farm and the bull riding and stuff. Even though I don't do any of that, for some reason, I think I just love these characters. The other one that I have, of course, is right here, the Kingmaker series. I honestly was debating between, oops, there goes all my books. I was debating between like the Brutal Birthright series or the Kingmakers, but I love Dean Yenin so much that I just want to be with him or be friends with him, even though he's an asshole. And, I love all these different characters. Sophie Lark's heroines are just so amazing. Kat is just such a badass, but like a beautiful person. I just love Sophie Lark's characters, especially her heroines. And I would love to hang out with Dean. He's such a badass. And I think that whole like environment is really fun too. Okay, so the next question is a book you wish you could live in. And Unfortunately for me, a lot of the books that I love are like post-apocalyptic, fantasy, like Game of Thrones. I love that whole world, but I would not survive in that world. I don't think I would survive in fantasy because I would say, if I have to pick a fantasy, I would say A Court of Mist and Fury. I want to live in that world. I want to be hanging out with Freya and Rhys and, you know, all Rhys's friends and his, you know, just, I'm not Tamlin. I don't want to hang out with Tamlin in that world, but I would love to be with Rhysand. And so that world, even though I don't know if I could hack it, if I had some kind of magical ability, maybe I could. But and I haven't read that full series yet, so I don't know if I should fully say that one, but I'm gonna put it out there. And then obviously the other one that I have okay, so since I don't think I could hack it and Game of Thrones, you know, post-apocalyptic, other things, I'm going to pick the series that, it's not a romance series, but it has some of the most beloved characters and the world that I just think it'd be so cool to be at Hogwarts with like Harry Potter and Hermione and Professor Snape, who I love, and just all of that. That's why I think the fan fiction is so fun for Harry Potter, because we're going back to that world. It's a nostalgic comfort kind of world for us. I mean, I literally go to sleep to a Harry Potter movie like every night right now. It's the one thing that helps me go to sleep, which is weird. But I love Harry Potter. I love Hogwarts. I love that whole magical community, and just, I think it's such a great thing. So I think that would be the world that I would want to live in, where I could do magic and, you know, fly on a broomstick and do all these cool things. So I definitely say that. Okay, and the next question is a book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. I'm not going to read a lot of books that I think I'm going to hate. Like, if I don't think I'm going to like it, I probably wouldn't read it. Unless it was like an arc, but why would I sign up for that? But one that I didn't think I would like because it was weird was the Spider-Mate series again on this. So I looked at that spider and I said, no freaking way. Like, how could I like this spider romance? And I freaking loved it. So this one really shocked me. I'm hooked. I can't wait for the other series to come out and the other books of the other Ricks in this series. I'm waiting patiently for that to come out so I can get into that. So definitely looked at the spider and thought, no way. And I loved it. So this one did get me. Okay, and number 14 is a book that made you cry. So I've said this in some videos recently that I don't really cry in romance. I read some dark stuff, some emotional stuff, but I don't usually cry. But like, I had 2 books this last month that made me cry, and I was kind of shocked. Honestly, I don't know if I was hormonal because I cried over a Mafia romance, and it's a duet. The first book didn't really, I thought it was like a 4-star book, whatever, kind of okay about it. Went into the second part of the duet, and for some reason, this hero made me fall in love with him. He became one of my book boyfriends on that list below, and I was so emotional with everything they went through. This is a duet, but the one that made me cry is Cosa Nostra, and I give this 6 stars. I cried multiple times where I was kind of almost ugly crying at the end of the book. So it was crazy. I loved it. I honestly can't really go into details on why it made me cry because I don't want to spoil anything. If you do want that kind of info, I did go into spoilers on my Mafia romance readathon vlog. I'll link that down below. But this was just, Max Butcher is on Book Boyfriend. He's so badass, alpha. I love him. And it was very emotional, just their romance together. So that one did make me cry. Okay, so the other book that made me cry was also read the same month, another 6-star read, and then that was Dark Notes. Like I said before, it has very stark subject matter. You know, this girl goes through a lot. And then big trigger warning because there is a violent death of a pet. And so that really hit me hard at the end of the book. So just, I want to put that out there because that is a big trigger warning for a lot of people. But this is just such a beautiful romance. So I definitely did cry for that one. Okay, so the last question is a book you would want to be able to read for the first time again. That's kind of more difficult. I think it's honestly going to go to the ones that hit me the hardest or had a bigger impact on me. And that is going to be Wolf and the Dove, because reading that for the first time blew me away. Obviously, I was a younger kid, so shocked me, but it made me fall for this. And then also Untouchable, because it was such an interesting read, and it really sucked me into the dark romance kind of books. And San Mariano. This was my beginning of my San Mariano love, and so I would love to be able to read it for the first time. To experience Carter Mahoney for the first time would be crazy. So I think those would probably be my first couple. Game of Thrones would be also another one, because it's just such a crazy book, and with shocking deaths and stuff that you wouldn't expect to happen, which if you know Game of Thrones, you know what I'm talking about. So I think that would be cool to kind of read for the first time and experience like the shocker that is the ending of that book. But yeah, so I think those are the ones that I'd probably want to be able to read for the first time. But those are all the questions. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to try this, please let me know. If you want to answer a couple questions, let me know some of the books that, you know, hit you the hardest. If you could, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.